Chapter 10. Thick fog hung over the ferry. The area around the dock was much less crowded than it had been during our first trip in the middle of the night. Small groups of soldiers stood staring at the water. Suddenly a longboat eased out of the mist and pulled up to the ferry. I climbed on board with several dozen other men. "I see you finally found a gun," a voice whispered. I looked down and saw the same sailor I'd talked to on the trip over 3 days earlier. "Oh, this," I muttered, looking at my musket. I'd gotten so used to carrying it I'd forgotten I even had it. "I heard it was quite a fight." "Yes, sir, it was." I hoped he didn't want details. I wasn't eager to revisit my memories of the bloodbath in the pond, or my panicked flight to the heights. "Wish we could have been there. Our regiment came over as reinforcements yesterday, and I thought sure we were going to fight." He shrugged. "They're saying it's a lucky thing we came over. General Washington ordered every boat for 5 miles around gathered up. Then they put us to work around midnight. We've done 9 round trips so far." "9?" "9, but it isn't so bad. We've all done a lot more miles fishing out of Marblehead." Still, I signed up to shoot redcoats, not to row. As the soldiers settled in around us, the sailor turned to me. "Say, son, you wouldn't want to row this trip, would you?" he whispered. He nodded towards the other rowers, who were slumped wearily over their oars. "We've been working for hours. First it was cannon and equipment, then horses and cattle, then the reserves, and finally all of you from the front lines. You could spell a few of us. This is probably one of the last trips anyway." After 3 days on the edge of war, I was ready for the safety of the city, and I didn't want to think about water. So I couldn't believe the words that came out of my mouth. "All right." Immediately I regretted my decision. What if the fog lifted? What if the British ships attacked upriver while I was rowing? They'd blow us to smithereens. This might be my only chance to get away. Sometimes I could be so stupid. But before I could change my mind, the sailor stood up, stretched, and reached out for my musket. "Son, I'll watch your gun for you. If the redcoats come, I'll need it. With this fog, though, I don't think we'll be seeing them any time soon." He looked back at the other Marbleheaders. "Boys, my friend here is a fisherman from New London. He's going to row the next trip." A few of the sailors grumbled, and one called out, "You got any friends, boy?" The other sailors laughed, and with that we pushed off. As I pulled back on the oar, I was shocked at the immense weight. This was not David and Ezra in the little rowboat. Weighed down with so many men, the rim of the boat was barely 3 inches from the water. I stared at the dark water so close to my face. Fear gripped my gut, and I forgot to row. A gruff voice from behind snapped me back to reality. "Boy, we need every oar. If you're going to do this, then do it." As we moved out into the river, I found the rhythm of the other rowers. We moved slowly and steadily, fog wafting about us. The water was smooth as glass. All was silent, even the oars as they entered into the water. As I angled my oar back for a pull, I saw why. The end of each oar had been wrapped with cloth to muffle sound. It was another trick to hide our evacuation from the British. All around us, heavily laden boats labored across the water. Some carried men, others cannons, still others horses. My arms began to burn from the rowing. I wondered how the men from Marblehead could have already rowed this same trip so many times. To keep from looking at the water, I stared at the exhausted soldier slumped in front of me. Something about him reminded me of Papa. I think it was the weary, hopeless look in the soldier's eyes. Papa looked the same way after Mama died. I heaved on the oar. I couldn't remember ever thinking before about how Mama's dying made him feel. I'd always thought about how it made me feel. Maybe Papa's feelings about me weren't just about my water fears. Maybe he was just sad and he was taking it out on me. I wondered if Papa was even alive. A lot of men had died in the fight. Maybe he'd been wounded and was over in New York somewhere. Or maybe, just maybe, he was on one of the boats around us, even now. Out of the corner of my eye, I glimpsed another longboat pulling abreast of us not 50 feet away. Maybe Papa was on it. I forced my eyes to look across the water at the boat pushing past us. Was Papa on board? I locked eyes with the first thing I saw. A large pair of bored black pupils gazed back at me and blinked. It was a horse. I cracked a little smile at my silliness. I'd see Papa when I'd see him, I decided. Maybe in New York, maybe back in New London. or if he died, I'd see him in heaven. I couldn't spend any more time worrying. I had a job to do. The longboat was nearing New York. Once I was done rowing, I decided I'd go back and find David and Ezra. Maybe I could help with the turtle. I hadn't officially signed any papers to the army, so it wasn't like I'd be deserting. We dropped off the load of men in New York and pushed off to return to Long Island. Without the load of soldiers, the boat seemed to glide effortlessly across the river. I pulled my oar with ease, powering the boat with the other men across the smooth water. As we rowed in unison, I felt as though we were one mighty man on a mission. The sailor behind me whispered, "Boy, I had my doubts when that rascal Williams pulled you in, but you're all right. You're a natural sailor." A sailor. I savored the words as we raced toward the Brooklyn ferry. Could it really be true? Was I really a sailor? A sailor who rowed well? A sliver of joy shot up inside me. The Brooklyn ferry was empty except for a few dozen anxious soldiers and officers. Most of these squeezed onto our boat. As we pushed off, another boat pulled up. "They'll be the last load," whispered the sailor behind me. "Unbelievable, we got it all, men, cannon, horses, equipment." In a few minutes we were several hundred yards from the ferry. Through the thinning fog I saw a blue arm reach up and help a tall, erect figure into the last boat. "Last man off," said the sailor. "That would be General Washington." As we crossed the river the fog steadily lifted. Soon the sun burst through and the river and our boats lay exposed for all to see. On the distant shore tiny red figures appeared. A puff of smoke rose and the thud of a cannon echoed across the water. The cannonball plopped harmlessly into the water far behind the general's boat. Hallelujah, I thought, the army lives.